Exactly 4 years ago, by absolute chance, with a small camera and lens, I took a photo of this European robin. That's the day that changed my life. That's the day my dream was born. That encounter of exactly 4 years ago led me to today to take the wildest decision ever. I quit my stable, safe, and good job to become a full-time wildlife photographer and wildlife photography teacher. So take a seat, because this is a story of how a young woman struggling with mental health and low self-esteem found the courage to take the leap. My name is Chiara, I'm 31 years old, and until a few weeks ago I was just a scientist working in a private company in the healthcare sector in Belgium. But today my life looks very different. Today I'm out here watching birds, taking some photo of birds. Making this video, I have to say, still feels a bit unreal, because there's totally still a part of me who doesn't believe that I truly did it. So let me explain a bit how this happened. We have to go a bit back in time. So in 2017, I graduated with full marks in veterinary medicine in Italy, because since being a child, I always loved animals, and I also grew up in the Italian countryside, always surrounded by that. So I went to vet school, but while I was in there, I kind of realized that the typical image of the veterinarian clinician working in the hospital or in a clinic wasn't really what I wanted to do. So at the end of vet school, I was very much confused. I had no idea of what I wanted to do. So the only thing that I kind of knew is that I enjoyed studying. So the most logical thing to do was going on a PhD. I made a bunch of applications, and I basically jumped on the first one I got admitted to, because it was one of the top scholarships in Europe. So even though I was not truly interested in the project, I said, can I really ask for more? So this is how I decided to embark on a PhD, and I moved abroad, specifically to Scotland. Now, you might know that doing a PhD is quite a heavy experience, so doing it in a subject you're not truly passionate about was really the recipe for disaster. And this is where I was exactly 4 years ago, in the last year of my PhD, and I started feeling unwell. I found myself often shaking, with my mind racing. I felt I was losing control, so I started seeing a psychotherapist, and it turned out that I had something which is called generalized anxiety disorder, which is basically a mental health condition where anxiety, worry, fear, dread is basically so frequent and related to many aspects in life, up to the point that this really impacts your life. And this is exactly what happened to me. I had to step back from my PhD for a bit, because I just couldn't cope. Now, I won't go much more into detail, but you just have to know that I was at my worst when I randomly remembered that I had this small camera, which I never used. And I was basically just desperate to find a distraction from myself, from my negative thoughts, from my overwhelming emotions. So that's when I started to just come here on YouTube and watching tutorials on how to use my camera. After watching a few tutorials, I felt I was ready to go, so I headed to the park, which was very close to where I used to live. And I went to the park with the idea of photographing the flowers, the plants, and the park itself. That's what I thought I wanted to do. And then when I was there, something else happened, because this European robin appeared from just a bush. So it came out from the bush, then it jumped on the ground, and it really started to come close to me. It was really checking on me. Instinctively, I took a photo of it, but before that, I really never paid attention to birds. I didn't know a thing about birds, but of course, the robin just captured my attention, because, it was a robin, it was very cute. And although I am a scientist and I should not believe in love at first sight or in magic, today I kind of believe in it, because I think that there was definitely something magical in that encounter, because although I wasn't not aware back then, that encounter with such a small creature literally change the trajectory of my life. I clearly remember that beyond the obvious cuteness of the robin, what really captured my attention was also the fact that such a small creature was really checking on me, a full grown human being. So I remember thinking, oh my goodness, this is a very small but brave bird. So from that moment onwards, the robin became for me a symbol. It became, oh, there is a buzzard. It became a symbol of courage. And from that moment on, whenever I was feeling the anxiety building up, I was just thinking about the robin, and I was repeating myself that I too could be as brave as the robin. And then, of course, I also remember coming back home and starting looking at my photos, and although those were literally my first ever birth photos, I felt quite proud of them, and being proud of myself was such a weird feeling. Like in those terrible moments where everything that I knew were negative emotions, feeling proud of myself was almost new, and it felt really good. This is basically how birds and bird photography became my anchor, and they gave me a new space to be me again, or even better, to find a new me, perhaps rediscover my real me that has been hidden for a very long time, perhaps. So from that moment, I went all in. I started reading articles, books, watching videos, tutorials, everything. I wanted to learn everything about birds. Watching birds became my favorite activity to ground myself in the moment, but also to reconnect with nature and just rediscover the beauty of life. On the other hand, bird photography was basically my practical exercise to help me restructure all of a series of dysfunctional thought patterns that I developed in the years. Basically, I had to let go of control and of perfectionism because I was brand new in bird photography. It was very challenging, and I could not really have any expectations because I just started out and I just had to learn to enjoy the process and actually feel joy also in all those failures. And there were many that I was collecting day after day. I also let go of my limiting belief that I couldn't do anything but studying, especially that I was very clumsy with my hand. So with bird photography, I discovered I could too use my hands in a meaningful way. And especially I learned the art of patience really when all I knew before was literally running, constantly running and in a rush to achieve things that were not really meaningful. That year, 2020, was a hard one. The pandemic also hit. In the middle of it, I moved to Belgium, but birding and bird photography can be saved through it all. I also started to feel better, so I started work again, my PhD, I wrote my thesis, and in December 2020, I successfully finished my PhD, despite all challenges. So of course, that was a huge relief. But of course, PhD ended, then what was I supposed to do? I knew at that point already that birds and bird photography were a huge passion, a type of passion that I never had previously in my life, but I just had started. It was less than a year, so I wasn't there yet anyway. So of course I had to look for a job, and based on my background and my education, I just found a job. I just jumped on an opportunity that presented, and this is what I have been doing for the past 3 years. So during the past 3 years, while I was working as a scientist, I kept investing literally every free minute of my time to learn about birds and to practice my photography. So basically all weekends, but also sometimes before work or after work, of course, depending on the season, Of course, to do so, I had to cut on some other activities that I used to do before, but that was not hard for me because again, birding and bird photography were just giving me so much joy, and another big part of the time was actually also used to create content because quite soon I started to share my journey. I started on Instagram. I think it was I think actually December 2020 that I started on Instagram because I soon realized that I couldn't just keep all the joy for myself, so I really wanted to put it out there. And then the moment that I started to learn things, I really wanted to share those things with people because I was thinking, birds and bird photography have helped me so much, and now I want to help also other people to have a more pleasant and nice experience when they're out doing bird photography. So that's what also led me to start the content creation and the social media part. But now I know you're wondering, how does a weekend hobby really turn to the decision of actually quitting my job? I mean, there was not a single moment. It was really a process and more a collection of moments. So, of course, everything started on the day in January 2019 when I met the robin. That was really like the seed. It started as a simple thought, like, oh, maybe I could do this as a job. But for a very, very, very long time, it was a very subtle, quiet thought that, of course, I kept for myself. I couldn't even think about it a lot because simply I wasn't believing in myself enough even to admit it that there was a possibility. Then another big moment was when one day I received a message from Canon Belgium that I was selected as young talent, and for the first time I got the chance to talk about my bird photography in front of real people. And that was a big moment because I mean it wasn't a huge thing, but for me it was, because for the first time I kind of started to believe a bit that perhaps that could be something. So another very important moment was the first time when I said it out loud. So I remember the day I woke up and I told my boyfriend that I finally decided what I really wanted to do in life. And I told him, and that day I cried because it was such a turning point to say it out loud, because saying it out loud, basically for the first time I was truly giving my dream a chance to live, and it was a bit of another building block in me actually believing in it. So there was a big moment. But again, I kind of realized, and that was what I wanted to do in life. But then how do you actually go and practically take the decision and move practically towards it to make it reality? So that also took quite a long time. Another important moment was back this summer. I was in the Shetland Islands, which were dream destinations for me. Since I started wildlife photography, I dreamt to go to the Shetland Islands. And this summer, I actually went there, and on my last day there, I spent a full day in this nature reserve. And after a long day walking and taking photographs against the wind, because let's wait for the plane to pass against the wind, while I was making my way back to the parking, just took a moment, sit on the grass just to take it all in front of the cliffs. I could see the puffins, I could see the northern gannets, the other birds flying around, and of course the ships all around. And in that moment I felt I belonged. I felt that was my place, in front of the sea, with the birds around me, my camera on the side, just looking at birds. Then a few months ago, when I was at work, I looked at the window. There's a great teeth in front of me. I looked at the window, of course, looking for birds. And then I really felt as I was a bird in a cage. So that's when I realized I really had to go. That was definitely not the place I belonged to, and that I just had to go. Was it easy to come to this decision? Absolutely not. I faced so many challenges. This is why it took so long. It was really a process. Most of my other challenges were actually internal ones, and I just struggled with my own thoughts. Of course, a part of me is still saying that this is just a crazy idea. In a sense, just leaving behind years and years of education up to a PhD and hard work to get to a good and stable job. Of course, I was also thinking that I am already quite old. I mean, I'm 31. Many people at my age have figured it out already all their life. Well, now basically I'm restarting my life. Another part of me was also just struggling with it because I lived my life with picturing myself as quite weak person. So, on the other side, taking this decision, what I heard also from other people after I told them, everyone's like, oh, this is very brave. And at the moment, I still struggle to actually admit to myself that this is brave. So it was kind of also a kind of a identity crisis, really. And of course also fear of judgment of other people, like what they're going to say. Will they think that I lost my mind? It was a challenging process, but eventually I just, little by little, I overcame all these thoughts. I accepted all these emotions, and I decided still to follow my heart. So it took time, so many pages of journals written, so many books on a variety of topics read, so many conversations with myself and with other people, but eventually I did it. I decided to follow my heart. So I quit my job, and today I can proudly announce that I started my new adventure as a full-time wildlife photographer and wildlife photography teacher. And it feels amazing, honestly. Of course, today I have no idea whether I will succeed. I literally don't know. I still have so many things to figure out, but it feels good. It definitely feels good. And on the side, I was also admitted to a postgraduate course in wildlife conservation because, as I mentioned, I've always loved studying, and I would also like to learn more about conservation in order also to add that aspect into my photography, and also especially to add the ethical conservation topic also in the teaching to my students. Throughout all this time, there's been one quote that has guided me. It's from one of my favorite authors, Mary Oliver, and it goes, "Tell me what it is you plan to do with your one wild and precious life." Today I literally have no idea if my dream will become true, but this dream is the most precious thing that I've ever had in my life. So this is what I plan to do now with my one wild and precious life. And of course, I'm now ready to share also this new chapter with you, just as I started sharing the first things I was learning about birds and bird photography. Now we will also go on this new adventure together. So if you're curious to know how this new thing will unfold, subscribe to the channel because I will definitely keep you updated. And thank you for watching.